that welcoming everybody back to beautiful this Medrash of Ner Avram, the Avodas HaParsha here, the new Elul season, right? And should be having in mind Refuah Shalema for Dr. Rifkin, who's one of the pillars here in the base Medrash and regular in the Shir. His name is Yisrael Ben Chaya Chasha. And no, it's fine. And also, Shalom Noah. The gentleman just came to Eretz Yisrael. Thank you. And also, Refuah Shalema for Alice Ben Charlotte, the mother of a friend of mine who's going to be going through an operation in Los Angeles in a few hours. B'soch Shar Choli Yisrael, everyone who's not well, the wounded, and everyone all should have Refuah Shalema. Kadosh Baruch Hu should send Refuahs and Yeshuas. Our topic tonight, and again, what we discover is that every tiny topic becomes a huge topic when you look into it. And this is the topic of Amon and Moav, these two nations that the male descendants are never allowed to become part of Eretz Yisrael, of Am Yisrael. What I did discover was something I hadn't known. They can be Megayer. They can become Gerei Tzedek, but they cannot marry into the Jewish people. Okay, it tells us right here in the Pasuk Lo Yovam, Amoni Moavi B'Kal Hashem, and Amoni Moavi cannot enter the Kahal Hashem, the community of Hashem. We're going to see why that word Kahal is important. Gam Dor Asiri Lo Yovo Lo B'Kal Hashem. Right, Dor Asiri, even a 10th generation will not be able to come in ad olam, forever. But the Torah gives the reason why. Al devara shelo kidmu eschem balechem uvamayim, because they didn't come up towards you proactively to give you bread and water. Baderech b'tzeischem mimitzrayim. When you pass by the lands of Amon and Moav, no welcome wagon, no come out with all those things. And Vasher Sachar Alechos Bilam ben Beor, and because they hired Bilam ben Beor, Mipsor Aram Narayim, the Kalalecha, to curse you. Okay, and then it says how Kadosh Baruch Hu didn't let Bilam's curses become curses; he changed them into brachas because he loves us. So when you look into the Mefarshim, there are so many questions about this. Let's just start with a few that really come to our head. They're that much worse than every other nation? Okay, they didn't give the bread and wine and water. Now again, hiring Bilam to curse us, that's true. That was an attempt to destroy Am Yisrael entirely. So if so, that should be enough. Why mention also bread and water? It's like, a guy's on trial for murder and the prosecutor says, and your honor, he's had a library book overdue for 3 weeks. It's like, what do you do? So here, they cursed, they brought Bilam to curse you and destroy you, etc. And when you came by, they didn't come out to offer you any snacks or drinks. It seems strange. Mefarshim also talk about the fact that Amon didn't seem to be involved in hiring Bilam. That was Moav, Balak Melech Moav, who hired Bilam to do that. So why does it join it together with Amon and Moav? I saw from the Alter of Kelm, a very typical, sharp word in terms of Musar. He says, because somebody who doesn't greet you with the bread and water is capable of hiring Bilam as well. Just didn't happen technically that they did it. It's an approach the Bali Musar often say that when you see a negative midah or a positive one, you're seeing the tip of an iceberg, right? So like you see a person get angry, they said that person could really destroy the world. If he had access to that button in Colorado that sends the nuclear weapons off, he'd push it if he's angry enough. So different things hold him back. That's part of their approach to this. Also, right, they had mon, right? It's not that they were starving to death and they didn't, they let them die of starvation, then give it to them. They had that. And if you compare it to some other nations who come just a pasuk or two later, right? Lo tesa'ev adomi ki achichahu. Do not reject the Adomi because he is your brother. In a previous year, we spoke about this idea. I forget it was the Sfasemis of the Shem Shmuel, that it says that Am Yisrael, on one hand, it said in the Medrash, were criticized for speaking to Edom in terms of brotherhood. Ko amar achicha Yisrael. Here says your brother Yisrael. So the question is, wait a second, the pasuk here says that Edom is your brother. And the differentiation was between the level of Yaakov and the level of Yisrael. Yaakov is a brother of Esau, and there's a certain level of brotherhood between our nations because of that. But in terms of the Yisrael aspect that we have, in which we elevate ourselves far above that, there Edom doesn't have that connection. It's important not to blur that distinction. Lo tesa'ev Mitzri. Don't reject an Egyptian, ki ger ha'isa ba'artzo. Right? You were, that's right. Remember those good years back in Egypt, right? When you needed a place to stay and you were staying there. They are able to join in after 3 generations. Amon and Moav, no bread and water. You can't do it. Okay, so what is going on? Okay, we find also other things that are positive in our relationship toward Amon and Moav. Al Tatzaras Moav. Am Yisrael forbidden to start up war with Amon and Moav. This is a reward that Lot received. Right now, it's a famous word to the Alter Slobodka. It says, why was Lot rewarded that Am Yisrael shouldn't start up war with his nations? It said because, why was he rewarded for that? Because when Avram and Sarah went to Mitzrayim, and Avram said that Sarah was his sister, and Lot, who also went with them, knew that, but he didn't spill the beans. He didn't say the secret. He helped keep the secret. So the Alter Slobodka asked, wait a second. If we were to read the Parshas about Lot and pick an incident to give him reward that would be for his generations afterwards, how about in Sdom, where he took in the Malachim, these travelers against all of the laws of Sdom, fought them off at the doorway when they wanted to kill him? So the Alter Slobodka answered, he said, listen, the fact that Lot took in travelers, took in guests, that was implanted in him almost against his will by the fact that he grew up and lived in the house of Avram Avinu. Right? That was something that was just there. It wasn't even a test for him. It became his second nature. He did, though, like to talk. And the fact that he kept his mouth shut when he had a secret that could be very juicy to people, that he got reward for. But still, so Amon and Moav are the descendants of Lot. Again, from that very hard to understand relationship with his daughters, that resulted in Amon and Moav. And we see that there is reward. There are other questions the Torah does refer to when it says that they told Edom, we'll buy water from you. It said, just like the Moavim hayoshvim ba'ar, just like the Moavim who lived in the city of Ar, sold to us. Wait a second. Right? So they say, it may be that they sold to them, just they didn't come out proactively to give them. And the big question is, if Amon and Moav are so poisonous, toxic, bad, etc., why does Mashiach come from them? Why is it that Rus, who comes from Moav, leads to David HaMelech, leads to that whole line, leads to Mashiach? If these are the two nations, and it mentions, Chazal say that there are 2 gifts that were hiding in Amon and Moav. There's a pasuk in Tehillim that says, Matzasi is David Avdi. I found my servant David. The Medrash says, Heichen Matzasiv, where did I find him? Bisdom. Dom was hiding in Sdom. Lot was saved, they said, because of 2 hidden gifts that were in there. Rus HaMoaviyah and Naamo HaAmonis. She married Shlomo HaMelech and was the mother of Rechavam. That was the continuation of the line of David and Shlomo. She married Shlomo, and was the mother of Rechavam. So this gets us kind of confused. So let's try to see what's happening. Rav Moshe Wolfson, and again I've been looking at his Torah some because he passed away this year, he points out what we're supposed to learn, and we're always looking here for points in our avoda, right, from this. He says, from here you learn the tremendous power of eating together. The tremendous power of eating. Why? He says, in his words, Ein lecha koach hamiyached kamo achila biyachad. There's nothing that joins people together like eating together. Eating together is a very strange phenomenon. On one hand, eating is a simple physical act that's there to replenish the energy and provide nutrition to your body. It's more sophisticated, but kind of the same as filling up your car with gas. You don't say to a friend, you want to go to the gas station, we'll fill up together, right? We'll get high octane this week. It's my favorite. You don't do it. You just go and you fill up. Here, people invite, you sit down, right? You choose, and the proof that it does this, right? If you need a proof just from the world, is the phenomenon of the business lunch. The business lunch is an amazing thing, right? A person from one company will get together with a person from another company, and they'll go out to lunch in a very fancy restaurant. And they'll spend an hour and a half, 2 hours of work time sitting in the restaurant, eating a lavish meal and schmoozing. And at the end, one of them puts it on the company credit card. Why does the company spend all that money? And this is a large part of the high-end restaurant business, really lives off of these type of things. Why would they do it? Why would they give them off time work? And it's not that they're signing contracts and doing presentations at the table. There's no PowerPoint going on in the restaurant. All they're doing is getting together. But that bond which is created by eating together does things. It creates things that link and that open channels that are there. And in fact, that's a limit zchus. Sometimes people, right, is to see the good in something. Sometimes in a Jewish community, aside from the usual pizza place, sushi place, deli that Jews open up as part of, civilization in a community after the shul and mikveh, but then those things are next, right? So somebody opens up a very fancy restaurant, sometimes in the business district of the city. And some people say, what, is that us? These fancy things, these fancy steaks, do we need it? But if you'll speak to business people, it's a tremendous bracha for them to have a kosher restaurant that they can go to with clients and other people that will also please them, right? That's on that level, on that madrega, it is something. So clearly, this does something. And he brings an interesting proof from halacha. Jews join together from individuals into a unit in different ways. One way they're always familiar with is the idea of a minyan. You have 9 Jews in the shul, each of them holding their siddur, ready to go, and somebody's yelling at the door, here it's Mordechai, right? At center, you need somebody, number 10, to come. And then when you have 10 people, they're joining together in tefillah. The tefillah makes them what's called an Eidah, right? 10 is an Eidah, upon which rests Kedusha, a special level of holiness that enables them to accomplish things at that tefillah that an individual simply can't do. When it comes to another form of joining together, which we call zimun, okay, meaning 3 Jews, the Gemara even had one opinion of 2 Jews, they sit and eat together. They are now linked into a zimun, okay, and therefore that leads them to praise Hashem in a particular way, which we call the zimun, which precedes the Birkas Hamazon. Now a person might say, okay, well, isn't it the obligation that they have to bench that links them together? Clearly not. Because if you have 3 people who are eating separately, like if you imagine in a restaurant someplace, one person had a sandwich, one person had a hamburger, another person had a sandwich. So if they were just eating separately with no connection between them, they are all obligated in Birkas Hamazon now, but they can't make a zimun. It's eating together which does it. We say, Sha'achalnu mishalo, that we ate from Hashem's food together. That joined us. That's what joins us. Right? So it's a fascinating thing. I was trying to think. I didn't find explicitly something that explains how and why it happens. We have to remember that eating itself is a process of joining. That's what joins together body and soul. That amazing connection that the Ramah explains, we refer to in the Bracha of Asher Yotzer, Umafli Lasos. Kadosh Baruch Hu does something wondrous. The body and soul are linked in a way that we can't even identify the division between them by eating. How do I know? If a person stops eating, body goes one way, the soul goes another way. That process is linking, and what it's doing is taking the shefa that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives to us in its most physical form and joining together with others. We're really all drawing from the same source for the same purpose. And it's a very powerful time of connection. Okay, we also say, right, the root pasuk for the format of the zimun is Gadul Hashem iti unarama mashmo yachtov. Right, make great Hashem together with me, and we'll praise His name together. Yachtov, he says an interesting things in terms of the language. To translate yachtov as together is not a good translation. because that means a bunch of individuals that are doing the same thing at the same time. Yachtov really means forming a unit, right? Actually joining, molding, melding into a unit. He brings a proof. It's a little complicated. The Gemara in Yevamos, which talks about the subject of aseh docha lo saseh. When does a positive commandment override a negative commandment? So it tells us we're not allowed to wear wool and linen, right? Tzemer upishtim yachdov, together. From that they learn that if you just have some wool on you and linen on you, but they're not actually molded together into one thing, so then that's not a problem. So with tzitzis, they say this is a proof that the first knot of the tzitzis that you tie, that's from the Torah. Because the Torah says that you're allowed to have wool and linen in your tzitzis. The mitzvah saseh, the positive commandment of tzitzis, overrides the lo taseh of shatnez. But for the lo taseh of shatnez to be there, it has to be yachtov. It has to be joined. That means knotted together into one. So he says that's what's happening in the power of eating. Okay, and there are very interesting applications of it. He brings, this in Bereshis, a beautiful explanation for the custom of Shalom Zachar. Okay, Shalom Zachar is an interesting kind of thing, right? Among Ashkenazim, the first Friday night after a baby's born. So you get together and you eat, right? Hopefully also you sing and share some divrei Torah and these things. But the basic format of the Shalom Zachar is you come, you put out some chickpeas, you put out some cakes, you put out these things, and people come and do this, right? Sfardim have more of a big Suda the night before the bris, what's called a Brit Yitzchak, okay? But a similar idea. Also this Suda after the child is born beforehand. So he said the following thing. He said, I heard the name of Gadol Echad, of one great Rav. The reason for the Shalom Zachar, he said it's brought from the Kadmonim, it's brought in early, that's usually already with the Rishonim, that it's Nichum Avelim Sheshachach Es Torasa. The Gemara in Maseches Nida says that the child in the womb, right, learns Torah, right, and he gets all the Torah he's supposed to learn there, but then when he comes out, he forgets it. It's a very powerful idea that in our lifetime we're actually reconnecting with and retrieving something that's already part of us. Okay, but he forgot it. So we have to console him, and that's what the Shalom Zachar is about. Now, I mean, sometimes they do have the baby in a little carriage there at the Shalom Zachar. I don't know how we're making him feel better, right, by having l'chaim and eating some cookies, which is there. Okay, so he says you have to realize this idea of forgetting the Torah is very traumatic to the child. It's not just if he forgets the Torah, maybe he forgets also that he lost the Torah. You know, he doesn't know what to miss. But you have to realize the neshama is coming from a source of total ruchnius, a similar world of spirituality like the malachim are in. And when he comes into olam hazeh, he comes into a world of physicality. This is very traumatic. To him, this world seems very dark and very physical and very distant, right? And frightening. The Mesilas Yesharim describes this in the first parak, that initially the neshama is revolted by this world. But Wolfson adds, he says, we show the neshama what's better down here. True, you came from this world of total ruchnius, but take a look at what you can do down here. Jews can get together and eat together. They can't do that there. This is a much bigger avoda that the malachim can't get. Okay, and he brings down, in fact, that there are different girsos in the song Shalom Aleichem we sing Friday night. Right? One of them is on the last verse, Tzeichem l'shalom. Some people always ask, wait, why are we telling the malachim to go already? We didn't even start the meal. It's like, Shalom Aleichem, welcome, welcome, see you later. Right? So there's one girsa that says, B'tzeichem l'shalom, when you will go. Some people don't say the line of Tzeichem l'shalom at all. Okay, so he says that you have to realize, when the malachim come on Shabbos, they're seeing an avoda that's beyond them. He quotes Rabbi Cheskel of Kuzmir, right? It was kind of the Rav who was at the roots of what became the Mudges dynasty. He says, because he said it in Yiddish, I'll try to read it as in the original explain. He says, the kigel is good, right? The kigel, or kugel, how you explain it, is good. Aber the malachim haben noch nicht versucht. But the malachim can't understand it. Right? They can't get it. So they come, right? But we say, sorry, we're about to do something that's beyond you. We're going to eat kugel. Right? So this means, right, he says that the avoda that we can do in this physical world, by joining together in the right way, right, in a way of Kedusha, and elevating that process to something is something which is beyond them. So this is how you have to realize, right? Hasidim would even say, oftentimes you see them getting together to eat and drink, not in lavish ways. People get it wrong nowadays, unfortunately, that everything becomes too lavish. I recently saw a letter from Rabbi Avram Shor from America, and he was protesting against a new style I hadn't heard of. He said, lavish Toameha parties on Friday. Okay, now there's an Indian called Toameha that you're supposed to taste the Shabbos food before Shabbos. Right, first of all, to make sure that it's going to taste good. Right, and of course, people tend to be machmir with the shir. You know, you don't want to have any suffix in brachos, so you eat a decent amount. But here we're talking about lavish buffets apparently going on Friday, especially in the summer, right, which has become a Toameha party. Right. The principle I saw brought down in one sefer is the closer two people are, the less the food has to be fancy. Right? I think the Piasetz and the Rebbe said that's why at Shalosh Shudas, which they talk about in the Svarim as the highest point of Shabbos, Rava de Ravin, which means the Ratzon of Ratzon, the will of all wills, it's the highest point of Shabbos. Usually the food at Shalosh Shudas, not so, at least the way it always used to be in the old days. So many shuls used to buy a ton of boxes of matzah after Pesach for cheap. And you'd eat matzahs at Shalosh Shudas. The rest of the year, matzah, a little gefilte fish, a little tuna, a little something. Yeah, herring, of course, but not like the first meal Friday night, like the first meal, the meal on Shabbos day, right? Where we're seeing the halacha that you're supposed to try and do more here. Yeah. He says, because at that point, you don't need it. There needs to be food. There needs to be a suda. But when you're that close, the nature of the Suda doesn't matter. Okay, so that's an important thing you see in terms of that. So now, let's take a look, right, at what this represents in terms of Sodom, which was the place that Lot went to, and Lot's separation from Sodom, the children that came out of his daughters, and their future. Okay. Along with that is the question, why is it that only the men from Amon and Moav are forbidden to join into the Kahal, not the women? Right? Different answers which are there, but we'll try to touch on some of it. So, Anshe Sodom were ro'im v'chata'im ma'od. Right? The Torah gives them a real title. Bad, evil, and really bad sinners. What was the nature of their sin that we see? They wouldn't let anybody give food to a guest. Right? Many fascinating midrashim about this, and Lot's wife, right, was a champion in this type of thing. And this was where Lot went. Now this is obviously the opposite of the midah of Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu is the midah of chesed, and Avram Avinu is also the unifier. Echad haya Avram. Say Avram was one. Right? It says that Avram Avinu Icha es kol ha'olam. He kneaded together almost like a dough all over the world. He joined everyone together by letting them know about Hashem. But it was accomplished through eating and drinking. The Eshel that Avram Avinu opened up was achila, shtio, ulevaya, with eating and drinking. So he was connecting with people through this. Okay? And it was exactly the opposite in terms of Sodom. Eshes Lot, right, the wife of Lot, who Lot married, he married a local, and he joined up with them intentionally, separating off from Avram Avinu. Despite that, when the Malachim came, he did something to help them. A line was able to continue from him. He wasn't destroyed with Sodom, but this root of separation went on into the children. Okay, now the fact that it was the males who exhibited it, as opposed to the women, the Chasam Sofer says something a little bit mystical. He says that every midah has its male aspect and female aspect. And the fact that it was the males who were blamed for not bringing out the bread and water shows that it was them who inherited that aspect of total separation from others, total selfishness, all of these things. So here, right, Am Yisrael, that has the line of Mashiach and David HaMelech come from that, something very big happened. The women are allowed to be Migisgayer and are allowed to marry into Am Yisrael. But that's a tremendous shift to have to make from a culture of Moav, in which it's totally the opposite of what Am Yisrael is supposed to stand for. And this was the greatness of Rus. The fact that Rus was the daughter of Eglon Melech Moav, she was the daughter of the king of Moav, that means the king represents, so to speak, the essence of the country, the essence of the nation. That's what it's meant to be. She is the royal princess. She has the essence of Moav in her. She abandons that first by marrying a Jew, separating off, and joining a nation which is a polar opposite. And then when her husband dies, going entirely to join the Jewish people and to take on the pathway of chesed. Right? It says the Megillah of Rus is full of chesed. Right? And to take that on with clearly no great future for her when she joins with Naomi, this shift is similar to the shift of what, so to speak, a king is supposed to do. A king is supposed to be able to shift things, to transform things. Melech poretz geder. It says a king is able to break through a fence. A king is supposed to be able to do these things. Mashiach is described as a transformer. Oz ehepoch. I will change the hearts of all the nations. So it says, Rus is the Ima shel Malchus. She's the mother of Malchus. This doesn't just mean the fact that her descendants became David HaMelech in the line of kings, but the very midah of Malchus itself, she established in Am Yisrael. By that tremendous transformation that she did and that she brought about. Okay, so therefore, this also is parallel to tshuva. Right? Tshuva is also that ability to shift and transform, to change that which is negative even into positive. Okay, that's something which is there, and Chazal say that David was the one who was making Ula Shel Tshuva. So, when the Torah tells us that Lo tidra shlomam v'tovasam, you should not look out for the peace or the good of these nations of Amon and Moav all of your life, what does that mean to us? The Chasam Sofer says, by not being like them. Don't be similar to them. Be gomle chasadim, together with each other. Unify, join, share, proactively bring to people who need, or just get together with people. We are the koach of ichud, and by doing that, then that helps their power of separation disappear from the world. But if we're doing the same things they did, so then we're helping continue on those negative things which are there. I'll just mention to finish, right? And that's clear. That's a theme of Elul, one of the famous Rashi Tevos of Elul from very early sources. Ish d're'eu matonos le'avyonim. What we have about Mishloach Manos, Rashi Tevos Elul, right? Because Elul is meant to be a time of giving. The famous psukim in Nehemiah about Rosh Hashanah, it says, Shilchu manos le'ein nochon lo. Be sure to give food to anyone who hasn't prepared. There were some communities that would do a type of Mishloach Manos for Rosh Hashanah, right, to make sure that everybody had food on Rosh Hashanah. It's very important, and that's a powerful part of Sudas of Rosh Hashanah and things like that as well. I just wanted to mention a fascinating thing the Chasam Sofer said when it came to that puzzling idea that the Mitzrim, right, that you are not rejected because you were Gerim in their land. So he said that really, when you look at our future, and this is important to know, when you look at the Tfilim Yom Noraim, especially Aleinu L'Shabeach and Al Ken Nekaveh, Am Yisrael have to do what they do as a nation. That requires a certain level of separation from others, but the whole point is to benefit the entire world, and eventually that the entire world is going to come to recognize Hashem and to join together. That's the transition from Aleinu L'Shabeach, where we describe the separation, Shehem Mishtachavim, right? And then V'al Kein Nekaveh, that everyone will come together, right? So he says, in order to do that, you need to have a connection. The Mitzrim did have that connection. We did live there, right? Despite the bad things they did. And that's what Chazal meant when they said that Am Yisrael only sent out into Golus in order to increase the gerim in the world. He said, you're kidding. We went through over 1,000 years of exile for the few gerim that happened to come about, which are there. That's it. He says, not talking about the Gerei Tzedek just that came. They have their own dynamic. It's talking about the Gerei Tzedek of the future. In order for all those nations to be Mizkaya, they had to have helped the Jew at some point. So therefore, Jews go all around the world. So that Ecuador had some Jews living there. Now, the nation of Ecuador will be able to join up, right? There have been Jews in Alaska and Jews in Tierra del Fuego and wherever you want, from north to south, all over. The Jews, this has enabled them, been a great benefit to the world. Even if you're stopped in the airport and you got a drink of water, right? That helps them get aboard the train. Okay, wishing everyone a wonderful week.